I'm excited about writing a computer policy. Said no one ever. But you are here today because you want to learn more. And thank you so much for being here. My name is Aretha Simons. I'm the webinar producer here at TechSoup. I want to let you know how you can engage. This is being recorded. You're going to get the recording, you're going to get the slides, and a link to a policy that's going to, or something that's going to help you. They're going to tell you in a few minutes. You're going to get that later today or by early tomorrow morning. I'm going to get ready to turn this over to Heather Newlin. She is the Educational and Training Manager at TechImpact. Heather, thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
Thanks so much. And thank you for asking everybody about their policy status, because that was really interesting to know. Okay. So, yep, I'm Heather Newlin, the Manager of Education and Training at TechImpact. And a little bit more about TechImpact. We're on a mission. Our mission is to leverage technology to advance social impact. And we do that in 3 ways. Full spectrum nonprofit tech services, nonprofit educational resources and webinars, and tech career development programs. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about computer use policies, which you guys already know. Basically what they are, what they address, and why they're essential for any organization. And after that, I'll introduce you to our policy builder tool and walk you through what it does, how it works, and why it might be a good fit for your organization. Pardon me. But before we dive in, I just want to state for the record, the webinar record, that the name computer use policy is pretty misleading. It's not just about computers. Like, as we're about to discuss, it'll cover a wide range of technology. And it's not just one single policy. It's like a master policy that includes multiple policies and sub-policies within it. So I think it needs to be renamed, and I will take suggestions in the chat for what people should start calling the computer use policy after this. Okay. So a computer use policy is a document that provides guidelines for how staff and volunteers and other authorized users should use technology in a work environment. It outlines what activities are permitted and prohibited, like the do's and don'ts, to help employees understand their responsibilities. And it defines like acceptable use of technology. The best way I can describe it is like a code of conduct for the digital realm. Okay, so why should you have one? What is its purpose? Firstly, to protect your organization. A computer use policy safeguards operations in many different ways. One way it does it gives guidelines on like something basic like software installation and updates, which in turn reduces the risk of malware or system failures. Pardon me. It ensures legal and regulatory compliance. So it helps nonprofits adhere to like data protection laws and industry standards. A lot of nonprofits would be impacted by this if you guys handle any sort of data or personally identifiable information, PII. So having policies in place would ensure compliance. It also establishes responsibility and accountability. By that, I mean, like, it clarifies duties and responsibilities. So it defines like the consequences for misuse. And it reinforces that everyone plays a role in maintaining a secure and efficient digital workspace. So if that makes sense. And the last one is actually my favorite. It upholds a professional environment. I have been at organizations where this is a problem. Workplace culture is very important in the success of any organization. And a computer policy really sets the tone for employee behavior. It shapes like the workplace culture, and by like giving everybody's on the same page. They're all using technology responsibly and respectfully and ethically, and in a manner that I guess, aligns with your organization's goals and values. So I think it's pretty important. Okay, so this slide is tricky for me to do because apparently when I was practicing, I learned that I can't talk and click at the same time. I can play the piano and I can play the banjo, but for whatever reason, I can't do this slide. So what's involved has involved. When I started doing research on computer use policies, it's amazing what they used to cover compared to now. So they began obviously when we all had just our desktop computers and the internet. They would focus on basic internet use and email use. And then over time, let's see if I can do this. Okay, over time, when see, it's ruined. It's all gonna, okay. Big surprises, as if you didn't know this was all coming. So yeah, as social media became more prevalent, it expanded to include guidelines for social media and online behavior conduct. And then, of course, the rise of mobile devices and BYOD, bring your own device, that drove policies to cover like mobile device security, software installation, and data backup. And then today, some policies are now just starting to include considerations for remote work environments and the responsible use of AI. And so I'm guessing the next thing will be like virtual reality will be included. I'm not sure. Okay, so what is typically included? This is just the general areas. I'm going to talk about them briefly and then go into some examples. So acceptable and unacceptable use. Just within your organization, how you want them to use technology and responsibly, essentially. Email and communication, internet usage, device security and passwords. That one gets tricky. I'll return to that in a second. Equipment maintenance, proprietary information, bring your own device, which I mentioned before, data protection and confidentiality, software installation, and social media conduct, which I think is, we have like pages on that one. That one's pretty big. Okay, so some examples. So email and communication, it might include email etiquette, restrictions on sharing accounts, like not sharing email accounts with your colleagues, and then policies around security, for instance, like how to handle suspicious attachments, or maybe sometimes there might be a policy about like a subcategory, like when is it appropriate to use BCC, a blind carbon copy on an email. Device security and passwords, instructions for creating strong passwords, how often to update, rules around securing devices when unattended, especially nowadays. You might not be working even from home. You might be in a coffee shop. So it's important to have a rule around when it's unattended. Social media content, my favorite. Expectations for how to represent the organization online. That's obviously very important. Restrictions on posting types of content, and then guidelines on personal accounts. It might also address issues like disclosing confidential information or posting like offensive content. Function and limitations. This is sort of like how to view a computer use policy within your organization, because even though it has a clear purpose, its function or role can get blurred. So, okay, in sum, as noted earlier, a computer use policy, okay, first and foremost, is a framework for responsible technology use. It provides structure for using technology responsibly and appropriately. Second, it's a security measure. I also kind of think it's like an educational document, and we can expand on that a little bit, but because it provides guidelines that protect an organization's systems and data. And then the last it's a compliance document. It's going to keep you compliant with rules and regulations, especially, legal stuff around data. But what it's not is, okay, it's not a replacement for trading, because even though it ensures compliance, it doesn't replace the need for like employees to be educated on certain things. So for example, a policy might outline password requirements, but employees still need training on recognizing like phishing attempts or something. Or a policy may require the use of like multi-factor authentication, but the policy isn't going to teach your employees how to set one up. So training should always be coupled with any sort of policy implementation. A guarantee against risk. So a computer use policy reduces risk, but obviously it's not foolproof. It can't fully eliminate the chance of cyber attacks or human error. And we'll talk about that coming up as well. See, I just keep pushing everything till later. We'll talk about that. And it's not a universal template. It's important that a computer use policy shouldn't be like a one-size-fits-all template. Every organization is unique and has like different technological environments. So using a generic template or one found online, I know a big one is like a Stanford offers one, but they're a university. So their template's going to be a little different than a nonprofit organization's would be. And I heard somebody say something about ChatGPT. That would be a good start, but there's still some issues with that as well. A lot of things might result in policy gaps that can like potentially present challenges down the line. Especially because policies should be aligned with your organization's specific needs. And that requires some like time to dedicate some time to like making the necessary adjustments. Okay. So what challenges do nonprofits face if they don't have a computer use policy? This was a fun one to research too. Pardon me. Essentially, it's all unclear expectations, essentially. So when you think about risks or threats, you usually think of hackers trying to break into your systems, but really, and I didn't know this, the biggest threat is just an insider threat. And that's kind of broken down into two groups, a careless insider and a compromised insider. This is just the language that I found they use. I would probably prefer like a clueless insider instead of careless, but a careless is like an unintentional threat due to unclear expectations. So if they don't know how to behave, they're going to choose to do something that could be could cause harm to the organization in general. I mean, okay, employees don't choose normally to engage in risky behaviors, but if they don't know that they're risky behaviors, they might do it. Compromised insiders, it falls under the same category too. It's sort of like accounts who have been compromised by cyber criminals, but that's often because they've downloaded software that they weren't supposed to. So it's really important to include some rules and regulations in there to protect your organization and to protect your employees and make sure you're on the same page and that they know what is expected of them. Legal issues. Okay, so yeah, it would be challenging, if not impossible, to demonstrate compliance with any sort of regulatory standards if you don't have a policy stating how to handle certain information. And if you don't have that policy, it could lead to fines and penalties. Additionally, there would be no recourse against like disgruntled employee who leaves the organization with sensitive client data and like post it in a forum or something. You wouldn't have any legal recourse. You couldn't go after them because you never said that they shouldn't do that. So yeah, taking appropriate steps to control risks is pretty essential. Oh, and productivity loss. Okay, this is sort of tricky to talk about because you don't want to be big brother and constantly monitor everybody's time, but it is important that a policy has like some note about what they like, I don't know if it has to be so specific in terms of time they spend on social media, but maybe some restrictions, because um, having a policy can actually have a positive impact on productivity. It minimizes distractions, and which overall increases effectiveness. And a policy is really meant to help, not to hinder. So this would be a fine line between coming up with, having policies in place that curb too much excessive internet surfing, but doesn't sound like this is the worst place in the world to work. Okay, so we've talked about what a computer use policy is, why it's important, what it typically includes. And now we're going to circle back to the title of the webinar and talk about how we can make a computer use policy as simple and pain-free as possible while still ensuring a comprehensive and customized document. To provide some context, for the last decade, TechImpact has offered a policy builder product. And in that time, we've served hundreds of nonprofits in building their computer use policies. And we took all those years of learning and wanted to scale our work to ensure that every nonprofit had easy access to computer use policies. And we were able to do that by embracing generative AI. So what we're calling it is policy builder. So our policy builder, I like to say it's simple, practical, tailored policies. Its key features obviously addresses essential practices, which we had talked before, like what should it include. It's guided policy development, and I'm going to walk you through that again. Customized to your organization, and it's AI generated. So instead of starting from scratch, our policy builder gives you a framework to follow. It provides policy statement prompts to help assess your current practices and define your customized policy. So essentially, each section provides a policy statement prompt to help you assess your current practices, and we'll see that. Okay, so here are the areas, as we talked about before. What's covered, you can see it's pretty comprehensive. It addresses the essential practices and key aspects of modern technology, including AI, which most don't. There's also education on it, around it, and a little brief description of what each section is about, and a short video. So let's see, let's get into it. Okay. Pardon me. This is the guided policy development part. So Policy Builder was designed on the Qualtrics platform. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. And Qualtrics is a tool used to create surveys and gather feedback. Each of the sections we just discussed provides policy statements to help you assess your current practices. And for each prompt, you select one of 4 options. We'll go to the example in the next slide. I'm not explaining it very well, but we'll give you a policy statement. And now if a policy is needed, you'll be given the opportunity to add some extra information. You just click policy needed. I need, this sounds good. I need a policy for this. And then we'll ask you to add information if you have it. Don't worry if you don't have other information. We'll just develop a policy that follows best practices. Pardon me. And then we'll tailor it to your specific context to make adjustments. Yeah. Policy review. If you have a policy, but you just want to see if it's up to standards, just cut it and paste it and put it into our policy builder, and you'll receive annotations along with a policy document. Policy current. If you have a policy in this subcategory policy, remember I said it's a huge master policy document with lots of policies. What I'm talking about is the mini sub policies. If you say oh, I have a policy on, I don't know, email account sharing, I don't need that. you can cut and paste your current policy just so it's embedded in the overall document, or not, just skip it. And then not applicable if it doesn't apply to your organization, you just skip that part too. Okay, so how it works. So like I said before, we used Qualtrics, but more readily we use the, okay, so Policy Builder uses generative AI intelligence. So generative artificial intelligence, Gen AI tools to provide like customized policies based on prompts you provide, which we just talked about. Chris, do you want to take over this part? I guess that's a no.
Sure thing. I was just responding to a question on the Q&A panel. Okay. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay. So yeah, the way that our policy builder works is we'll collect your responses on Qualtrics, and we'll be providing the link to that later on. And then within that Qualtrics survey, for each of the policy statements, you will be given the opportunity to input comments or notes about how you want each of the policy statements to be generated. So for example, if in your current organization, you have a certain way of doing some things, you have certain rules in place, maybe you don't have them put into practice yet or into a formal document. But for those policies that just informally have in play, you can add them as context in the survey. And then using generative AI, we'll be able to incorporate those notes into the final policy statement. And if you don't have any comments about a particular section, that's totally fine. We'll just provide you with a default statement that just incorporates general good practices. And then using all of your survey responses, we'll be able to generate the final computer use policy document.
That's great. Okay, so what Policy Builder does and does not do, I think this is important. It provides like a good starting point for your organization's computer use policy, but it should be properly reviewed and edited before put into practice. That's why we provide it in as a Word document. So yeah, it provides a good starting point for your organization. It does incorporate details you provide into your policy statement. It does not create a document that should be used without editing, and it does not read your mind. Obviously, it doesn't read your mind. What that really means is it doesn't fill in missing details. So clear input leads to better results. So the more you tell us and the more clearly you talk about it, the better your results are going to be. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's take a look at Policy Builder. Okay, so as we talked about before, these are the prompt statements for each of the different policies or sub-policies. It's going to give you some information about it. So this one says explains ownership of proprietary information stored on electronic devices, and then gives a little information about it. And then oh wait, hold on. I could start the video here. I don't know. Does this work? Okay, yeah. So you just choose which one, if it's needed or not. And I think this is needed. And then it's going to ask you to give any information that you might have. Sometimes it includes another prompt, like it suggests what information we'd like to know. And sometimes it doesn't. Here's just a screenshot of it, another one. Essentially, we just break down every policy, sub-policy that is essential to have, or at least we think, and you decide if it's needed or not. Let's see. Okay. Chris, would you mind explaining this one?
Sure. So this is just a demonstration of how a response to one of the survey questions is reflected in the final document. So for this question, it's a statement about providing guidelines for sharing accounts. So for example, maybe you want to explicitly prohibit sharing personal accounts like your email or whatever with other people in the organization. On the other hand, maybe your organization has some specific accounts that they, or you have a specific organization-wide shared account. But regardless, if you want to include a statement like this in your policy, then you just click Policy Needed. And then in the text box, you can add any additional context that you would like us to consider in the policy statement. So here you can add your current practice, which could be, we don't let staff share the personal accounts, but we do have an organization shared Canva account, which is actually the case for us at TechImpact. So then when you fill out the survey, you will be giving two documents. One is the policy document, which just includes the policy. And then one is the annotations document, which includes commentary from the generative AI about what it, how it addresses the comments that you put for each statement. So here we can see the policy that it comes up with is, so all passwords are to be treated as sensitive and confidential. Users may not reveal their personal account passwords or allow their personal accounts to be used by others, including coworkers, supervisors, or family members. However, the organization permits the use of a shared Canva account for collaborative purposes. So as you can see, it takes into consideration the note that we provided that we don't allow sharing personal accounts, but we do have this Canva account that's shared. And then it'll reflect that in the actual statement. And then in the annotations document, it just gives a summary of what it did. So it includes the particular statement and then the user's input, which is policy needed, and the comment that they provided. And then it just gives a brief explanation of how it addressed that comment.
Yeah, that's great. And then we have another example. Let's see. Explains the process a staffer must follow if their password is compromised. Okay, so this is for a policy review. So this is, you just, like I said, cut and paste your policy, your current policy, insert it in here. And then this is, so the other side that is what you'll get from it. It'll review it for just best practices, essentially. So let's see, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read this and it's so small on my screen, I can't even read it. Any employee suspecting that their password may have been compromised must report the incident to the IT department. Okay. And so the fleshed out, let's see, the annotation says, okay, the statement effectively emphasizes the importance of reporting a compromised password, but it lacks specific instructions on how to report the incident and what immediate actions the employee should take, such as changing the password immediately. Ah, that's good. Consider adding these details for clarity and comprehensiveness. So yes, it just gives you advice on how you can tweak it to make it more thorough and robust. Okay, so why Policy Builder? Okay, so yeah, it could save time instead of doing research for weeks at a time and then drafting different policies. Policy Builder can help you do it. I'd say probably 30 minutes to an hour, depending on your needs. It also can be, I said I was going to mention this earlier and then forgot, but it's really difficult to cover every aspect of computer and network use without having in-depth knowledge of the ins and outs of IT and the cyber world in general. So it's hard to know if you're using ChatGPT or if you're doing your own research. I mean, like, if you don't really know this material, it's hard to know what you should and shouldn't have. I think that's why you should use Policy Builder. It also mitigates risks, adapts to various nonprofit sizes, missions, and cultures, and it's created by a nonprofit for nonprofits. And the best part, it's free. Okay, any questions? Which I can't answer, but Chris can.
Well, there are lots of thank yous in the chat. A lot of people say this was a lot, and Chris has been answering questions in the chat along with Justin. This question here, is Policy Builder only for computer use / technology, or can it be used to write other types of policies?
What types of policies? Sorry. So I'm having computer issues. I'm unable to see the chat or the Q&A. So that's why we're having.
Right. They asked the policy builder that Tech Impact is providing, is it only for computer policies or can they use it for other policies like board policies or any other kind of policies they want to implement? HR
Well,
policies.
it would be anything that falls under technology use, essentially. So anything that involves technology would fall under the umbrella of a computer use policy.
Okay,
I
and
probably
Justin,
ran through that section too quickly, but yeah. So anything that involves technology is covered in the computer use policy.
yeah. Okay, Justin and Chris, feel free to jump in here. Is there a cost to this policy?
No, there's none. It's free.
Awesome. Kathy says, is the program only for nonprofits or can business use it also?
No, it's only for nonprofits. I'm sorry. At this point, it's only for nonprofits.
Okay, we're going to put the link in the chat in just a moment for you to get the policy builder, for you to build your policy. And also, if you're watching this on the replay, the link will be sent out in the email as well. Christine said, we'd like to create a policy that requires users to go through IT when signing up for any cloud services or tools. So, or if or when they leave the company, we know all the tools that need to be deprovisioned. Does anyone have suggestions on how to implement this? That's a great question.
Yeah, I don't know. Chris, do you have any suggestions? I mean, that would be, I mean, I think that the generative AI would come up with a way to handle it if you're that detailed in your comments in Policy Builder.
Yeah, so this could go into a particular statement in one of the sections of the policy. If you're asking about the process for creating or coming up with the policies to put in place, one thing that we at Tech Impact are planning on providing as well is a system where after you fill out the survey, get your policy, at an extra cost, you can schedule an appointment with a technology assistant at Tech Impact to help flesh out your policy further.
That's awesome. Thank you for providing that services. Nancy says, are there good examples of policies that we can see?
Oh, I don't have any at the ready aside from what we had in the presentation. Let's see. Well, I could, in the follow-up email, I could definitely send many.
Okay. And also, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Helen, the policy builder, maybe we should have done a demo on that, or at least a couple of minutes of what that would look like. When you go to this page, you do this, and it would answer this, because I think a lot of people are asking, about this policy builder. Can it do this? Can it do that? And I think some of the questions be answered, probably showing them.
Yes, I probably should have done it. It's just so unique to each organization that I didn't want to mislead them, like think that they had to respond one way or the other.
Great point. Great point. So I hope everybody heard that. That's a great point. Yes, you will get the link in your email. Just a friendly reminder, we will be sending out the video replay and these slides, and also the link to the policy builder where you can build your own policy, which is great for nonprofits. It is a free tool provided by Tech Impact. Justin or Chris, did I miss any other questions in the chat?
See, Chris Hunt says, is there an option to create a super streamlined, just the basics tech policy? Yeah, one thing you can do is you could just fill out the survey and just indicate policy needed on all of the sections and not provide any comments, and it'll just kind of give you, a basic template for a policy that in general provides good practices. And then you could go through that and just remove policies that you don't feel are particularly relevant. Jenny Lewis asks, does AI transformation impact computer policy, and if so, how? Yeah, so if you provide a comment for one of the policy statements, the generative AI will interpret your comment and incorporate it into the statement. So we saw an example of that in the demo earlier, where it incorporated the fact that we have a shared, like organization shared Canva account, which it writes
Which
into
we
the
do
policy.
at TechImpact.
And Justin, I think you were going to say something earlier, Justin.
Well, I was just, I don't think we have any other open questions at this moment.
Okay, just one last question from Jen just popped in. I just rewrote our policy. I will use this to check my work and starting drafting the amendment policy for next year. Awesome, awesome. Does AI transformation impact computer policy, and if so, how? Great question.
Does AI impact, like, I'm sorry, I just missed the last, does
Yeah,
AI,
Oh,
yeah,
I
I
just
mean, it
answered
depends.
that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can go ahead.
What was
Who,
the
me?
answer?
Yeah. So it affects the computer policy for the statement that you write your comment for. So we specified that we use an organization shared Canva account. So it impacts the policy in that particular statement.
Oh, I see. Okay. I misunderstood the question. But I do want to say that it's probably important before you have AI policies, you might want to have some sort of AI plan at your organization before you can even start implementing policies around AI. Incorporating AI into a computer use policy is pretty new. I haven't found too many organizations out there who are doing it. So yeah.
That was great information. If there are no other questions, Helen or Chris, would you like to give the final words, and then we'll close this out and give people back their time.
Go ahead, Chris. What would you like to say?
Okay, so first, Brian has another question. Will handle development policy on the safe use of AI. So we do have some sections about safe use of AI. For example, in transparency, interpretability, and like privacy, like making sure to put in de-identified data. So there are some sections about that. Okay, so I think to close, thank you all for joining us on this webinar. Thanks to Aretha, Heather, and Justin for helping facilitate this. Thanks for Heather for creating this presentation. Yeah, I encourage everybody to try it out because this is a new product that we are rolling out. So yeah, this will provide really good feedback for us as we continue to improve this product, so that we can continue to support all nonprofits with their own computer use policies.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.